A rejected record sat there like a bad omen. The song was Only You, and the first version was so weak that Buck Ram did not want it released. Then the same song came back, became a hit, and helped turn 5 voices into one of the smoothest machines in early rock and roll. They had 4 #1 pop singles. They sang The Great Pretender, My Prayer, Twilight Time, and Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. Records so polished they sounded almost untouched by real life. But real life was waiting. In 1959, the male members were arrested in Cincinnati, later acquitted, and the damage still stuck to them. Their lead voice, Tony Williams, soon walked away. Zola Taylor left. David Lynch and Paul Robi followed. The sound stayed famous, but the people inside it kept disappearing. Then came the cruelest twist. The name itself became the battlefield. The court records are real. The chart numbers are real. The arrest was real. The decades of legal fights over who had the right to stand on stage using that name were real too. And the strange thing is, the group that made romance sound effortless spent the rest of its story proving that harmony on record does not mean harmony in life. This is the Platters' real story. Chapter 1. The name that started on a turntable. Before the world knew the name, there was a young man trying to get away from home and build a life somewhere else. Herb Reed came from Kansas City, Missouri, and his early years were hard enough that he left an abusive home at just 15. He made his way to Los Angeles, stayed wherever he could, depended on friends and foster care, and eventually spent time in the United States Army. That matters, because the group he later helped create did not come from comfort. It came from survival, hunger, and the need to belong somewhere. By the early 1950s, Los Angeles was full of vocal groups chasing the same dream. They wanted a sound, they wanted a break. More than anything, they wanted a name people would remember. According to the group's own account, Herb Reed found that name while thinking about the platter on a record player, the spinning piece that held the vinyl. That image became the Platters. It sounded clean, simple, almost elegant. The early group was not nearly that settled. Members shifted quickly. Names came and went, including Alex Hodge, Cornell Gunter, Joe Jefferson, Gaynell Hodge, David Lynch, and Herb Reed. That kind of movement was common in vocal groups. But with the Platters, it started to feel almost prophetic. From the beginning, the name seemed steadier than the people inside it. Then the voice arrived. In June of 1953, Tony Williams replaced Cornell Gunter, and suddenly the group had a lead singer who could make a room go quiet. Tony did not sound rough or desperate. He sounded polished, wounded, and almost too smooth for rock and roll. The classic shape formed piece by piece. Herb Reed gave the group its bass foundation. David Lynch added tenor color. Paul Robi brought baritone strength. Zola Taylor gave them something most rival male vocal groups did not have: a female voice that softened the blend and made them stand apart. That became the first real trick of the Platters. They were young enough for rock and roll, smooth enough for older listeners, rooted in rhythm and blues, and polished enough to cross into white pop America. Before any of that became history, though, they were still a fragile group in Los Angeles, trying to make one name hold 5 lives together. And that name was already carrying more weight than anyone knew. Chapter 2. Buck Ram finds the formula. The man who turned the Platters into stars was not the singer standing under the lights. It was Buck Ram, the manager, songwriter, producer, and arranger, who understood something many record men missed. This group did not need to shout to be powerful. They needed to sound expensive. They needed strings, control, romance, and room around Tony Williams' voice. Before Buck Ram, the story almost died in the small print. The Platters first recorded for Federal Records, but those early records did not break them open. The pieces were there, only scattered. A bass voice, a lead voice, a group blend, a romantic instinct. Still, the public was not listening. Then, on February 15, 1954, the group signed with Buck Ram, and their future changed. Ram saw what they could become, but he also knew they were not there yet. That became painfully clear with Only You. On May 20th, 1954, the Platters recorded an early version of Only You for Federal Records, with Tony Williams on lead. This should have been the beginning, Instead, it nearly became a dead end. Buck Ram thought the recording was too weak and asked the label not to release it at the time. Think about that for a second. The song that would help make them famous was once treated like a mistake, a rejected version, a manager hearing the problem, a song waiting for the right room, the right label, and the right arrangement before it could become what it was supposed to be. The move to Mercury Records gave them that room. By 1954, the Platters were tied to Mercury, and Ram finally had the right machine behind his vision. He did not turn them into a loud rock act. He made them sound like Heartbreak, dressed for a formal dinner. The arrangements were clean. The harmonies were crisp. Strings gave the records a glow. In front of it all, Tony Williams sang as if every line had been polished until it hurt. The voice mattered, but it was not the whole secret. Zola Taylor gave the group a different shape from the all-male vocal groups crowding the market. Herb Reed's bass gave the records weight. David Lynch and Paul Robi helped build the blend that made the leads feel larger. Together, they could take older pop instincts, rhythm and blues feeling, and doo-wop structure, then make all of it sound new enough for the rock and roll era. That was Buck Ram's gift. He framed them. He understood that their records could sound gentle, while the voices underneath carried hunger. The surface was silk. The engine was survival. Once Only You came back in its stronger Mercury Records version, where the rejected song became the doorway. Chapter 3. The smoothest sound in early rock. When Only You finally reached the public in 1955, it did not explode overnight. It climbed slowly, almost stubbornly, taking nearly 5 months to reach the charts. Once listeners heard it, though, they understood. The Platters were not selling rebellion in leather jackets. They were selling longing, and they made longing sound enormous. Only You reached number 5 on the pop chart and topped the rhythm and blues chart for 7 weeks. For a group that had nearly watched the same song get buried, that was more than a hit. It was revenge with strings behind it. Then came The Great Pretender. This was the record that made the group impossible to ignore. The Great Pretender became their first national #1 pop hit, and it gave Tony Williams one of those vocal performances that seem simple until you imagine anyone else trying it. He was not screaming pain, he was containing it. That made the record hurt more. Soon the hits began to stack. My Prayer reached #1. Twilight Time reached #1. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes reached #1 too, and in the United Kingdom, it also became a #1 record. 4 #1 pop singles. That is the clean number. The feeling underneath it is messier. The Platters were crossing over during a time when black performers still moved through a country full of racial limits, suspicion, and double standards. Their records could enter living rooms where the singers themselves might not have been welcomed. Their voices were embraced, while the people behind those voices still had to survive 1950s America. On record, everything sounded graceful. In real life, grace had to fight for every inch. The films made them look even bigger. In 1956, the Platters appeared in Rock Around the Clock, performing Only You and The Great Pretender. They also appeared in The Girl Can't Help It, Carnival Rock, and Girls Town, placing their smooth vocal style inside the early rock and roll explosion. Still, they never fit the wildest version of that explosion. The Platters did not need chaos to command attention. Their drama came from control. A held note, a clean entrance, a harmony so exact it almost hid the pressure behind it. They could turn old-fashioned ballads and standards into records that felt modern without tearing them apart. That was their genius. They made adult pop feel young. They made rhythm and blues feel formal. They made doo-wop sound like it belonged under chandeliers. For a few stunning years, the formula worked almost too well. The public heard romance. The charts heard money. The movie cameras saw a group ready for history. Behind the perfect blend, though, the first cracks were waiting. The records were smooth, but the world around the Platters was not. And in Cincinnati, that world was about to crash straight through the music. Chapter 4. Cincinnati breaks the spell. Then came 1959, and the clean image cracked. By that point, the Platters were not just another successful vocal group. They were polished, international, and bankable. Their records made romance sound respectable. Their stage clothes were sharp. Their voices were controlled. Everything about them had been built to look elegant enough for any audience. Then the male members were arrested in Cincinnati. The details around the incident have been described differently over the years, and that matters. The safest fact is this: the men were arrested, they were later acquitted, and the scandal damaged them anyway. That is the part you cannot soften. Legally cleared did not mean publicly forgiven. For a black vocal group moving through 1950s America, reputation was not a small thing. White performers could survive scandal with a wink and a comeback story. Black performers were often judged by a harsher rulebook, one written by people who already wanted a reason to turn suspicion into punishment. The songs sounded pure, the headlines did not. That contrast is where the story turns. The Platters had crossed over by sounding safe, romantic, and controlled. Once their private lives became public scandal, that carefully built image turned fragile. The same audience that had welcomed Only You and Smoke Gets in Your Eyes now had a reason to look at them differently.
And make this chance I gaily laugh to think.
Once that kind of stain lands, acquittal does not always wash it away. The career did not stop overnight. Groups rarely collapse that neatly. They keep performing, they keep smiling, they keep singing the same songs as if nothing has changed. Inside the Platters, though, something had shifted. Tony Williams, the lead voice most people connected to the group's biggest records, stopped performing with them after the Cincinnati incident and soon left to pursue a solo career. His departure was more than a personnel change. It was like removing the face from a memory. When fans heard The Great Pretender,
but no one can tell.
They heard Tony. When they heard My Prayer, they heard Tony. When they heard the ache in those polished ballads, they heard a voice that made pain sound formal. Now that voice was walking away. The group still had Herb Reed, the founding bass voice. They still had the name. They still had the catalog. They still had the machinery around them. But the center had changed, and listeners can feel when a center changes. That was the wound Cincinnati left behind. Not just an arrest, not just a scandal. It was the moment the public image broke, the lead voice slipped away, and the name The Platters started becoming something stranger than a band. It became a brand that had to survive without the exact people who made it famous. Chapter 5. The Voices Leave. The name remains after Tony Williams left in 1960. The Platters entered a different kind of life. They were still famous, but fame had become heavier. Every performance carried a ghost inside it. Audiences still wanted the old sound, the old songs, the old shimmer. They wanted the feeling they remembered from Only You and The Great Pretender. Now the group had to deliver that memory without the voice that first burned it into the public imagination. That is a brutal job. A replacement singer does not just sing notes. He has to stand in a place already haunted. Sonny Turner stepped into that role, and the story did not end with him. The group still found moments of life after the classic lineup began to break apart. Harbor Lights reached the top 10 in 1960, and later, during the Musicorps years, Sonny Turner sang lead on records including I Love You 1,000 Times and With This Ring. That last one mattered. In 1966, With This Ring became the group's biggest hit of the decade.
Love notes I treasure, loving you to stay around. Oh, with this ring I promise.
It proved the Platters were not just a museum piece yet. They could still place a record in the public ear. They could still make the name move. But something important had changed. The group was no longer climbing toward one shared peak. It was trying to preserve a peak that had already happened. One by one, the classic lineup loosened. Zola Taylor left in 1964. Her exit took away the female voice that had helped separate the Platters from so many all-male vocal groups. Then David Lynch and Paul Robi left the following year, and with them went more of the blend that made those Mercury Records hits feel untouchable. By the mid-1960s, the name remained brighter than the lineup. That is where the story becomes painful in a quieter way. There was no neat final curtain, no single room where everyone admitted the original magic was gone. Instead, the group kept going, and that may have been even sadder. The songs survived, the bookings survived, the public name survived, the people kept changing. For fans, that leaves a strange question. Are you still watching the Platters if the voices are different? Is a group the people who made the records, the founder who named it, the manager who shaped it, or the name printed on the poster? With the Platters, that question stopped being philosophical. It became business, and later, it became law. Their greatest gift was harmony, but their afterlife became a fight over identity. The smoother the old record sounded, the harsher the later question became. Who had the right to carry that sound forward? By then, survival had started to look like replacement. The name was still standing. The original voices were fading out of it. Chapter 6: The Battle for Harmony. The longer the Platters survived, the more the story moved from music into ownership. At first, the name meant a group of singers chasing a break in Los Angeles. Then it meant hit records, movie appearances, and a sound that helped define early rock and roll romance. Later, it became something else entirely: a legal prize, a touring identity, a mark people fought to control. For Herb Reed, that fight was personal. He was not just another singer who passed through. Herb Reed had helped form the group. He was credited with giving the Platters their name. He had been there before the Mercury hits, before Only You became a breakthrough, before the name was valuable enough for other people to argue over. That is why the later court battles cut so deep. The legal history is complicated, but the emotional truth is simple. Different people and companies claimed the right to use the Platters name, and courts had to sort through decades of assignments, settlements, trademarks, and performances. In one later ruling, the court found that Herb Reed's companies had interests in the Platters marked superior to Monroe Powell's interests. Think about what that means. The group that once made records about devotion ended up with judges deciding who could legally stand under its name. By then, many classic voices were gone. David Lynch died of cancer in 1981. Paul Robi died of cancer in 1989. Buck Ram, the architect who framed their sound, died in 1991. Tony Williams died in 1992. Zola Taylor died in 2007 after pneumonia following a series of strokes. And in 2012, Herb Reed died in Boston at age 83 after declining health that included chronic heart disease. The old group was disappearing from the earth, but the name would not die. That is the strangest part of the Platters' legacy. The people were mortal, the blend was tied to a specific moment, and the classic records belonged to a world that had already vanished. Yet the name kept spinning, like the turntable image that supposedly inspired it in the first place. The songs entered halls of fame. Only You, The Great Pretender, and Smoke Gets in Your Eyes were all honored by the Grammy Hall of Fame. The group itself entered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1990, recognized as one of the vocal acts that helped connect doo-wop, rhythm and blues, and pop for the rock and roll generation. That honor was deserved, but it did not erase the damage. Listen now, and you hear two stories at once. You hear the beauty. Tony Williams floating over the arrangement, Herb Reed grounding the sound, Zola Taylor, David Lynch, and Paul Robi helping create that polished glow. Underneath it, you hear the cost, a rejected song that became a miracle, a scandal that an acquittal could not fully repair, a lead voice that left, a classic lineup that slowly vanished, a name so valuable it outlived the people who made it matter. That is why the Platters are more than nostalgia. They are a warning hidden inside beautiful music. Harmony can be recorded, it can be sold, it can be replayed for decades. Keeping it alive between people is something else entirely. The saddest part is that the Platters never stopped sounding beautiful. That is what makes the story sting. The records still float. Only You still feels innocent. The Great Pretender still sounds like heartbreak wearing a tuxedo. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes still turns pain into elegance.
All alone to real
behind that elegance was a group that kept losing pieces of itself. The arrest was real, the exits were real, the court fights were real, and the name that once meant 5 voices in perfect balance became something people argued over long after the original harmony was gone. Maybe that is why the music lasts. Because every note sounds like the thing they wanted most and could never fully keep: harmony.